And I did pick Luis in this matchup. He's got the pedigree here. We do know that this bloke knows how to sling digital cardboard. Well, it now depends upon the turn of a card. We've got a mulligan now for Ivan Floch. This deck doesn't mulligan super well. It does have a lot of redundancy, but it does require a good number of cards and a 5-lander here. But there's that key card, Heartless Act. That'll slow things down a little bit.
Yeah, mulligan for both players already not the worst for Ivan. We are in game 1, not game 2, so it is not 1-0 Ivan. But that Temple of Malady going to do a decent job of trying to at least maybe smooth the draw here for Ivan. Also has those 2 cycle lands now,
yep.
So potentially if there is some flooding happening, he can cycle those and try to put himself in a better position. But Ivan really needs some sort of early ramp spell to try to set himself up to capitalize on powerful draws like Emergent Ultimatum if he's going to win this game.
A lot of decks, a lot of these Sultai lists also are built with just a huge number of lands. Like this is a deck that wants to hit every single land drop every turn of the game, more or less. And so I think I've seen some of this with up to 40 lands in an 80-card deck, which is obviously pretty bananas. But, there are, as you say, built-in safety valves against flood. There are the temples, which can bottom extra lands. There are the triomes, which can be cycled away, of course. And that does make all the difference. Having said that, you always want to hit your land drops with Sultai. It's a very mana-hungry deck. And, yes, the more lands, the better in many situations. Here's a Heartless Act on the robber. That's good. For Floch here, no extra cards for Luis, but another temple. Starting to get a little punishing here.
Yeah, and we didn't really talk about this when looking at the decks, but this isn't your typical Yorion deck. Yes, there are omens and some sagas that you can blink for value with Yorion, but in a lot of ways, this deck is playing Yorion because it really just needs more than 60 cards to function. The amount of ramp you need, along with these packages of different cards to make Emergent Ultimatum good, kind of leads this deck to want more room than 60 cards naturally. And once you find yourself in that position, you may as well become a Yorion deck. So this is one of those weird things where we've seen Esper Doom Foretold wants to be a Yorion deck. It wants
to actually take advantage of the ability.
They play 3 more copies of Yorion in the main deck. This deck has no other copies of Yorion. You're not really a Yorion deck. You're just a deck that really needs more than 60 cards.
You can, as you say, you can get some value out of the Yorion. You can blink the Kiora as the Sea God. You can blink your Binding. Very strong to do that, of course. And, of course, there are those Omens of the Sea. But it's funny because some cards you really don't want to blink. I'll tell you what. The first time I was streaming this deck and I suggested, I can blink my Tibbers and reset his loyalty back up after I'd killed something. And my chat was like, No, Manny, of course not. You obviously don't watch enough of my stream. My chat was like, go ahead, do it. And I was like, why? Why do you want me to do it so much? You jackals. What is this? So I sniffed it out. No, I didn't do it. And, it returns as a 2-1, by the way. If you blink your 7-mana Planeswalker, it comes back as a 2-1. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't listen to the jackals in the chat.
Shadow's Verdict.
Shadow's Verdict cleaving the board here.
The exile clause on that card, just relevant time and time again. We see getting rid of that Annex. Normally Annex really punishing against sweepers, but not against Shadow's Verdict. So Ivan manages to stem the bleeding. Asika's Chariot, a great draw, because now he's able to play it, set up for either Yorion blinking your Chariot next turn, another great blink target, by the way, that I failed to mention earlier, or if Ivan is able to find a 7th land, Kiora the Sea God gets an 8/8 hexproof in play, and blinking that with Yorion gets very disgusting really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. This Asika's Chariot is a relatively new addition to the list, and it actually does look pretty good here. It's a way to gum up the board, as you can see here. It's a way to close out a game as well. Kind of plays both sides of the court pretty effectively here, Money.
Yeah, it really does. And again, because you want to be blinking it, you don't want to be animating the Chariot to block your normally. You would rather block with the Chariot than the cats because the vehicle, once you don't have the creatures, have no real value. But because of this Yorion, you're going to trade off the cats instead and allow the Chariot to get cashed in for 2 more cats later on.
Now here comes the Bone Crusher Giant, however. which is going to break up this double block and mean that the Torbran lives to fight another day.
Yeah, not the end of the world, actually, for Yvonne, as had he crewed the chariot because of Torbran, the Stomp would have gotten rid of the chariot instead, and that would have resulted in Yvonne taking 4, as well as the same thing happening, and he wouldn't have the chariot around for blocking. So, yes, Luis gets to keep the Torbran, but with a second copy in hand, that was more of a tempo play than necessarily a value play, and now with Embercleave drawn, the tempo really pays off for him by already having this Torbran on the battlefield.
Really impressed by this Isika's Chariot here. We talked about how this deck isn't really a Yorion deck, but that play there begs to differ. All right, here's the attack now. Bone Crusher Giant and Torbran getting busy.
Yeah, you see now that Yvonne has played the Yorion, the Chariot as a vehicle no longer has that much value, although there is one very cool interaction with the Chariot copying Cure, that's the Sea God tokens, that is quite fun, but This game's probably not going to get there thanks to that Embercleave. So now you just want to trade in this Chariot because if you lose these creatures and are just left with a vehicle, you're in trouble.
So waking up the Chariot now. And blocking in this situation always just feels terrible because you know they've got it. They've just always got Embercleave. You know it.
Yeah. There's just nothing Yvonne can really do. You see It's
getting little his cup of soup here.
Yeah. Yogurt soup, whatever it may be. Just it's tough. When they have it, there's nothing you can really do. Would have loved to draw the 7th land that turn, but unfortunately was not there.
So Embercleave and its rather confusing interaction with Torbran here is going to mean that Floch's going to take a stack, obviously. I mean, that's just always the way it goes. But Luis here, considering where he wants to put this Embercleave, does he put it on the Giant? Does he put it on the Torbran? Which creature does he want to save? At first you'd think, well, Torbran, right? But there is a second copy of Torbran in hand, so maybe you pop it on the Giant instead.
Which he actually chooses to do so.
Yep. So the Giant now picks up the sword.
So 7 damage coming through. Yvonne falling to 6. Not dead, notably.
And now there's 7 lands for this Curobest, the Sea God.
Yvonne needs to draw an Emergent Ultimatum. That much is clear. But if he finds the time to draw that Emergent Ultimatum, I don't think this game is by any means out of reach for Yvonne.
So there's the Torbran, and now an attack with the Bone Crusher Giant once again. So this is an attack for, is it 14?
This is an attack for 14 with a bit of an asterisk.
With like 14, but terms and conditions apply, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
14, read the fine print.
They get you. This is how they get you through the door. You know, in the window they put 14 damage with a little exclamation, a little asterisk, and then by the time you actually sign the paperwork, they're like, well, actually, it's not. In some situations, it's 4. This is the top speed that your ISP offers.
Let me tell you how 14. You can get it to 14.
Up to 14 damage available here. Terms and conditions apply. Offers not available.
If you tell 2 of your friends about 7, and they tell their friends, you might get to 14 in like 3 weeks.
So the Giant disappears. The Torbran sticks around, obviously. The Embercleave hits the bench. And a little bit of a respite here now for Yvonne Floch with the second chapter of Curobest, the Sea God, tapping down those creatures critically, and a little bit of breathing room here. Although, you know, it didn't get tapped down permanently, is those Faceless Havens.
And with Embercleave on the battlefield, Luis is 1 mana short of being able to animate a Faceless Haven and equip Embercleave to it. So not that far away from being all set. Yvonne will likely have to main phase this Behold the Multiverse, try to find something, but there's Emergent Ultimatum. I don't think you can bottom that. You have to keep it. That's your out here.
That's right. You take a lick in this turn.
You definitely take a licking this turn. Yeah, you keep up the Mystical Dispute. Robber, you Mystical Dispute that, and yeah, that's good. You do it.
Yeah,
Luis
you missed to
can't
dispute this because now this means that Scott-Vargas can't activate. Has the choice, right?
Yeah, Luis can let the robber die and get in with a Faceless Haven, or pay for the robber and get in with the robber for the exact same amount of damage, but with an exile and an extra creature on the battlefield. No-brainer, you definitely pay. But Ivan's alive, I think.
There's a couple of points of life. Oh, yep. Oh, Omen off the top, in addition to that
Okay.
binding. But here now is the Immersion Ultimatum. What do you take? Now, what do you take here? Do you take the Embercleave? Do you take the Torbrand?
So Ivan's pile, realistically, I believe needs to be like Time Walk, Shadow's Verdict, and Vorinclex? That doesn't even do it. If you take the Torbrand and get...
Shadow's Verdict?
Huh. Okay, Extinction
we might
Event.
see Extinction Event, Shadow's Verdict here, and then a Time Walk maybe. The thing is, getting those two just means that your opponent can stick away whatever third card you pick.
Are all the creatures on Luis's side of the board even? They are.
They're all
so
even,
Extinction Event, Vorinclex, Extinction Event, Vorinclex, and Alrund's Epiphany, I think, are a great three, because if they don't give you the Extinction Event, you just kill them. Yeah, I think it's Vorinclex, but I'm not 100%. You have the Embercleave now.
Oh, Vorinclex. Of course Vorinclex, yeah, because you got the Embercleave.
Yeah, that's why it's...
Manny, you're so smart.
But this is good. Luis can't realistically give you the Alrund's Epiphany because you get another turn. So the board is going to leave. You're going to get the Valky. Maybe you're going to get another turn, and the board's going to leave and not get the Valky. But yeah, you just can't get the other turn. That's the big problem.
Yeah.
All right.
The extra is a huge issue, and often you'll see the Alrunds. If you're ever not sure, by the way, for those of you who are having Immersion Ultimatums put in front of you, if you're ever not sure, he's playing it as a Valky. He's playing it as a blocker.
This is the problem with getting the Valky over the Vorinclex, is you need a blocker for that Faceless Haven, and now you have a 2-1 blocker instead of a 6-6.
Yeah.
I think this was a preventable line of decisions from Ivan by getting Vorinclex.
Yeah, you got Vorinclex.
Now
6-6.
Ivan just has to chump.
All right, so now, a chump block has to kind of peel here.
Oh, it's a rogue, Riley. It's a rogue.
It's a rogue, of course.
It's
so
it
enables the attack from the Robber of the Rich cards.
My goodness.
And so now Omen of the Sea draws a card, and it's
it's a stomp.
Giant, so a lethal stomp. So all that Luis Scott-Vargas has to do here is untap.
All Luis has to do is untap. And untap he shall.
Yep. I mean, here's a 7-mana draw 3. Not the rate that you want here.
And those are not the 3.
Nope. No, not going to be enough. And it looks like Ivan Floch is going down here to the mono-red menace. Luis Scott-Vargas going to put himself on the board in this game, and maybe even in this match, win his first for today. He's 0-4 at the moment. Here's the Faceless Haven. And, of course, that lethal Bone Crusher Giant just waiting in hand.
Yeah, Luis definitely going to certainly make Ivan have it, use the Heartless Act first, and then once the Heartless Act is used, then the Bone Crusher Giant will come out to end the game. But no need to do it while Ivan has mana up, just in case.
And here's the old Stomperino. And that's the ball game. Ivan Floch goes down game number 1. And we go now to the sideboards. In what is a very hotly contested matchup, at least on Twitter. You were saying before, people arguing about this. People can't decide whether it is mono red, whether it is Sultai.
Yeah, normal builds of Sultai, not good against mono red. But Sultai is by far the most customizable deck in Standard right now. You can more or less build your deck to beat any specific targeted matchup. The big problem is Standard is so diverse and there's so many different decks that require different cards to beat them that it is problematic to try to build your Sultai deck to beat everyone. So whatever you're targeting, you have to get the read on the metagame right. And I certainly think they are targeting red with this build of Sultai. So hopefully we'll see if this will pay off for Yvonne in post-Cyborg games. We do see those eliminates, the Pelucranos and the Elder Gargoth coming in, some of the more controlling elements coming out. And for Luis, we see the card we talked about the last time we saw red, the two copies of Empress Paladin.
Empress Paladin. The draft, the rock solid 11th pick draft card here. Embereth Paladin. Look at this card. My goodness. A 4/1 haste. It comes in as a 5/2 with a +1/+1 counter. Manny, why is this terrible card being played in this matchup?
There are 0 instant speed answers to this card in Yvonne's deck. We see those 4 Heartless Act. They don't deal with it. We see the eliminates coming in. They don't deal with it. Even with Yvonne untapping, Shadow's Verdict does not hit this card. So Yvonne has 1 Extinction Event and 4 Binding of the Old Gods as straight up removal. Now, this build from Yvonne does have the 3 copies of Asika's Chariot. So certainly there are some blockers floating around. But this Embereth Paladin isn't an easy to answer threat from Luis in this matchup.
Let's have a look at the openers here. A snap mulligan here for Floch.
This hand is perfect, though. This 6 is everything Yvonne wants.
Yeah. Good mix of lands and spells.
I would be sending away the Time Walk, I think, here.
Yep. No interaction. No removal spells here to slow the burn.
No removal, but you do have the Chariot, and Omen on 2 does mean that you have a decent chance of smoothing out your draw, and hoping that you can find maybe a removal spell or some kind of board wipe to follow up these turns.
Sure. I mean, Temple into Omen. Wow. Puts a Cultivate on the bottom as well. One of the best cards in the deck in the early turns, but not interested in it. Does want interaction.
There's just nothing he's ramping into right now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Just nothing to drive towards, right? There's the Charger land off the top here. We're probably going to see Bark Channel Pathway played on the other side. So the Omen is live. Temple's an interesting addition. Older versions of the deck weren't playing Temple, but it can be awkward with too many pathways to have all of your mana available in the opening turns.
Yeah, there's just no real cost to having some.
Yeah, right. Like this is a deck that can sneak tap lands into play quite easily. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the big reason to not have too many temples is you're already committed to playing some number of triumphs. That's just how the deck is more or less built. And when you're when you're relying on hitting Emergent Ultimatum on curve, too many tap lands means that you are very much risking putting yourself in a position where you get punished by having a tap land on the wrong turn.
Robber of the Rich now. This is going to be a spicy little extinction event.
Yeah, 7 damage coming through here thanks to the Rimrock Knight. But
it's a lot.
Yvonne does have the answer to at least all of the 1/1s on the board, but not the Robber and not the Faceless Haven that's in play. So even if Yvonne was to go extinction event here, he would still be facing down 6 damage, half his remaining life on the other side of the board. I think Yvonne could actually consider just playing the Chariot here.
Just soak up some damage that way. Yeah, an option. I mean, if you can get the Yorion down with in the wake of the extinction, you're probably just taking so much damage though.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is if you play Chariot this turn, that means you can play Yorion for Chariot the next turn.
Yeah,
and I think that just goes so much more smoothly, and that's why Yvonne, with this curve, allows himself to have the position to do that.
Yeah, the blocks, this makes the attack of the robber worse as well. So the Faceless Haven is going to be woken up, so we might see just 3 damage come across and a chump and a block on the 4/3.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to either see a double block on the Haven from Yvonne or a block on the Robber and a block on the Haven.
Bit of good fortune there for Yvonne with the Robber missing.
Yeah, certainly as we've seen, the Haven being a changeling means that even when Robber leaves the battlefield, Luis can have access to those exiled cards further into the game.
So Ivan here, considering his blocks pretty carefully, there is the double block available on the land. Or are we just going to see the Chariot woken up here? So this says to me that there's going to be a block on just the Robber. Oh, wow. Not wanting to blink it?
This looks like Ivan is actually setting up to Extinction Event next turn. Get rid of the creature land. You really want to be exiling these Fireblade Chargers because they are representing reach. So I like this line from Ivan. This is actually really heads up. Get rid of your Chariot, trade it with the creature land, keep your tokens, and leave Luis with 2 cards in hand and just the Robber that you have 2 blockers for. If Ivan can live, if Luis doesn't draw something like an Embercleave, which would even be castable next turn, Ivan is able to slam down Greater Elder Gargaroth, and this game is fully in his control. I think this line from Ivan was really, really smart. Yeah. I've loved what he's done over the past few turns.
It's a little counterintuitive, but the more that you think about it, right, Ivan actually wants to play the Extinction Event before he plays the Yorion. Because if he plays the Extinction Event after the Yorion, he necessarily loses something, whether it's the tokens or the Yorion itself. So by getting rid of the Chariot, it means that he can get extra value out of the cats by casting the Extinction Event the next turn because he knows he's going to cast it on odds. So I don't know, it's some big brain stuff from Ivan. That's the sort of thing you'd expect. A little unorthodox, like a little outside the box thinking there, but to these little edges that all come together to make a big difference at the end of the day.
Yeah, Ivan just showing excellent decision-making when it comes to making sure to leverage his resources at every turn of the game while still putting on as much pressure as possible and making sure that he gets a path to victory, not just survival.
Wow, Immersion Ultimatum is actually, like, decent if Mono Red ever casts it. They go and get Torbrand, Embercleave, Anax.
It's going to be a tough ask for Luis to attack and be able to cast the ultimatum, considering the Faceless Haven it requires the cost to activate. But
oh, ye of little faith! No.
If the game gets there, it's tough, tough to beat.
All right, here's Javier Dominguez making an appearance as well. But now, Ivan on a do you want to say precarious life total? What is 7 life in this situation? Is it precarious? Is it? It's a little lower than you'd like.
Is modest. I would say
a modest life total. Perfect.
I don't think we're on precarious yet. It is Gargaroth time, though.
Right, so the Elder Gargaroth, one of the ways to gain life in this deck, of course, very important. Big 6/6 that can block extremely effectively here. And attacking with all 3 now to find another card of Wolfwillow Haven.
We're getting closer to the Emergent Ultimatum.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And 1 damage coming across, but 3 life being gained, or are we going to draw a card? No, it makes it 3/3 here. Okay.
Makes it 3/3, more blockers, going down to 6. Ivan gets to make those blocks safely because he has full information about Luis's hand. May have done things differently if Luis had a card in hand, just because you don't want to expose that Gargaroth to potentially being killed by a 2 damage removal spell. But as it is with perfect information, Ivan was able to do that, and now the game is just over. Ivan has a removal spell, able to gain 3 life here if he wants. Honestly, there's no card off the top that will deal 6 here, so with that Heartless Act, with that Binding of the Old Gods, this game is fully in Ivan's control, and I would not be surprised to see Luis concede after his drop step.
The Binding gets rid of the 1/1. The Heartless Act gets rid of the Faceless Haven, and from here you can just ride that Elder Gargaroth to victory. Yeah, and that's going to do it for game number 2, 1-1 between these 2 players here. Scott-Vargas picking up a loss in game number 2. And look, Ivan Floch played that one out pretty well. You know, he made some decisions that I don't think everyone would have necessarily, and they really paid dividends for him. You know, I think he showed some pretty excellent decision making, some really spot on threat assessment, and he did very well to get himself across the line there. Scott-Vargas kind of left in the dust by the fact that Floch was able to forestall the onslaught and then stabilize nicely behind his 6-6. Not too many changes made to the sideboarded plans of either of these two blokes here. We see the Eliminate coming in for extra interaction, and then just some big old thumpers here in the form of the Gargaroth and the Pelucranos. And it's going to be...
The sideboarding wasn't determined by play draw in any way.
Can be Javier Dominguez making another appearance here. Fervent Champion, turn number 1. And the Robber as well. Nice curve.
Terrifying hand from Luis.
Yeah. Look at this curve, man.
And the Heartless Act exiled. Yvonne would have loved to draw that one. Does really, have a Tangled Florahedron, but he's falling really far behind really quickly.
Yep. Yeah, this is looking very good for Scott-Vargas so far. Tangled Florahedron comes down, but I mean, you're ramping towards, what, Shadow's Verdict? That's still 2 turns away.
Yeah, that Shadow's Verdict will not be coming down before Luis has cast an Embercleave, essentially.
Yeah, that's right. Right? Like, even as the board is now, Embercleave is a threat next turn.
I think that should be enough for Yvonne to want to trade off. You don't even get to trade off. It's just
you don't get to trade.
Yeah, this is just bad.
Really, really bad. Has to take it here. Takes another 5 down to 11 on turn 3.
Oh, that's a nice draw.
Binding isn't bad, but I mean, you what do you kill? Like the Phoenix, you're still taking 1,000 damage next turn. This is still an attack for 7.
Any creature, you just need to try to ensure that an Embercleave doesn't come down next turn. Do your best to keep an Embercleave off.
Yeah, I guess if Luis doesn't draw a land, then there's no Embercleave, but still, they always have it, man. They just always have it. Like, let's not pretend.
Why are we even talking about it?
Let's not pretend, man.
Realistically, for Yvonne, either you're getting rid of the Robber or the Phoenix. The Phoenix does represent more damage if Luis has no other place, but the Robber could hit a card from Yvonne's deck that would turn this around. I don't know what is already exiled, and wow, just not even going for binding, saying, all right.
Fear. No fear. The thing is, right, you get to a stage where this is something that like lower tier players like me just can't do, right? Can't do this. You can't play around everything. High tier players will get to a position where they're like, right, here's a list of cards that I lose to no matter what. I'm not even going to try to play around them. I'm not saying this is the case, but Ivan Floch may have calculated that he is dead to Embercleave no matter what, and so he's going to play as though the card doesn't exist, because it doesn't matter how hard he tries to play around it, it's still going to kill him. That's something that actually happens more than you'd think when pros come to the conclusion that X card wins, so I'm going to try to beat every other card.
Yeah, this is game 3, not game 2, and I think this is the game. Yvonne will block, Luis will play Embercleave on whatever was blocked, likely the Robber. Yvonne will untap Shadow's Verdict, and Luis has that Faceless Haven for what I believe will be lethal.
And once again, the power of the Faceless Haven, it has completely changed the way that the late game is contested. Well, not even the late game in some situations. It means that sorcery speed removal, sweepers and stuff just can't be relied upon. Oh, how about a Pelucranos, huh?
Yeah.
How about just Pelucranos? Wow, Luis Scott-Vargas all of a sudden playing Jund aggro, and we see the big 6/6 Hydra come into play. And that is enough for Ivan Floch to concede the game. And Luis Scott-Vargas is on the board. Mr. Horned Turtle himself.